My name is Marlow Tinari. I've been a Valley resident the greater part of my 78 years. And I've also been a firearms owner and proud carrier of a firearm in a legal manner as prescribed by law. I won't burden you with the details of two incidents that occurred in my personal life, which saved lives, mine included, by simply brandishing a firearm, not having had to use it, but neutralized the situation that was very life-threatening. I will focus primarily on Jack Finn's proposal, and I believe in the deepest aspects of his heart, he truly believes what the ordinance would be, as he defines it, ensuring the safety and welfare of those who use this facility. I have to suggest, however, Jack, that you're in error in your observation of that. Quite the contrary. I think it endangers the lives of all of those who may be present. A good example of it is we have a use of a facility that your ordinance addresses at this very moment. We might have a scenario, and it may very well be in such a case, as you're already aware, there are multiple firearm owners here who have carry permits. Whether they have their firearms on them or not, I do not know. However, a scenario unveils where we have a public hearing, we have some discourse, agreement or disagreement, and everyone goes home, and no one is harmed, and nothing bad has happened. But we have to consider one undeniable fact. Evil exists. It's existed since Adam and Eve. This board, this governing body, and perhaps most, have never and will never find a way to eliminate it. It's just there, as unfortunate as it may be. However, addressing specifically your issue, we have a scenario as I just described. The meeting adjourns, everyone goes home safely. There are two other possibilities that may very well exist in this scenario. We have a situation where all of a sudden we've got XYZ criminal sitting out here, a mentally deranged individual, an individual who's got a grudge against some member of the Board of Aldermen, or some made-up grudge that he has in his warped mind. He, by definition, taking action with a firearm, immediately becomes a criminal and violates not only a law pertaining to gun-free zones, he violates any number of laws and is a multiple felon by his very nature. His very nature. He ignores the law that you would propose to impose on us. So we have a scenario, unlike my initial one, where everyone goes home happy and no one is harmed, where on the spur of the moment he draws his firearm and two of your colleagues sitting to your right are no longer with us. He turns his firearm, directs it at you, Jack, and you stand up and bravely wave your ordinance, saying you cannot do that. You see, that's against the law. Now, I ask you specifically, under that scenario, with the possibility that, and this would not be an uncommon situation, we may all be faced with that, where you have brown stains somewhere, okay? And that would be understandable, okay? I ask you, would you prefer to have the ordinance in your hand as your deterrent, or one of these individuals out here who's a law-abiding citizen carrying a firearm, dispatch that individual and save your life? Plain and simple, that's the only thing you have to ask yourself. Which would you prefer to have in your defense? A piece of paper that's worthless in deterring a criminal element or some mechanism in place that would have an effective means of protecting you, the remaining members of the board, the public in general, these two little children over here, so they wouldn't be the same type of scenario as happened in Sandy Hook. I suggest to you, I think you know which, in the deepest elements of your heart, which you would prefer to have. And I can only urge you to think of this observation in a general sense. Like, a firearm is no more than a tool. It can be used for good, and it could be used for evil. It can be used to commit a crime, and it can be used to prevent a crime from being committed. It depends on the hands of the man that has it. There's no good gun, there's no bad gun. Does a bad gun become a good gun in the hands of a good man? And does a good gun become a bad gun in the hands of a bad man? I don't want to address the broader gun issue, except to address the scenario I've described to you here. Think of it in those terms. I think, and again, in the deepest aspects of your heart, you'd feel a lot more comfortable having one of these law-abiding gun owners who, by far and large, incidentally, in order to have that right to carry, had to prove proficiency in the use of the firearm. We think of first responders as the police and fire department, and they do an excellent job, but unfortunately, they're not on the premises. A true interpretation of a first responder is the persons on the scene at the time, perhaps the very victims or those in his presence. Those are the true first responders who have the most effective ability to terminate a tragedy at its inception, not 5 minutes later, not a half an hour later, not 2 days later when all the politicians get up and give their scenario speeches on TV at the would'ves, the could'ves, the ifs, the whats. The presence of a law-abiding citizen within a municipal building or out in the general public is one of the most effective deterrents against a warped mind or a criminal. That, again, your life being in danger, which would you prefer to have in your presence in this very setting? Your ordinance on a piece of paper, or one of these law-abiding citizens who may very well come to your rescue and the rescue of all of us. I thank you for your time and courtesy.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to speak? Yes, sir.